Hey folks, today I'm going to give you 10 tips to help you out with your solo gigging, so stick around. So these 10 tips that I have for you are all based on my personal experience playing live over the last 30 years. Things that I have forgotten to do or haven't done and learned my lesson. And so without further ado, let's get on to tip 1. Tip number 1 is to allow yourself enough time to get to the gig. If you're playing at 8 p.m. and you need to get to the venue by 7 p.m. to spend an hour setting up, then give yourself enough time to actually get to the venue with time to spare. If you've got an hour travel ahead of you, don't leave at 6. Leave maybe at 5:30 or even 5 o'clock. Don't leave things till the last minute, because if something does go wrong, if you get a flat tire, you're going to have to fix it, and it's going to make you late for the setup, right? Which could make you late for the actual start time. So the last thing you need is to be actually rushing through your setup and forgetting things like tuning your guitar or plugging certain things in. And then troubleshooting, if you do plug everything in and something's not working, allow yourself enough time to take care of any would-be disasters before the show starts. Tip 2 is to take spare strings, cutters, and a string winder to your gigs. It doesn't happen often, but there will be a day when you will break a string, and unless you're taking a spare guitar, you're going to need to change that string. And so having these is invaluable. I've learned my lesson the hard way with that. I don't take 2 guitars to gigs. These days I like to try and compact down all of my equipment into the car as little as possible on one trolley load, and taking 2 guitars is a bit of a pain. So I just take the 1 guitar, but I make sure I have strings, a winder, and cutters, just in case. Tip 3 is don't forget a guitar tuner. A lot of the guitar effects you get now have tuners built into them. A lot of guitars have tuners built into them. But if you don't have those, just make sure you bring a tuner to tune your guitar, or at least have a phone, iPad or whatever, and use a guitar tuner on that so that you can tune your guitar before you start playing. On to tip number 4, and that is spare batteries. Don't forget to take batteries. If you've got an active pickup system in your electric guitar, or you've just got a piezo system in your acoustic guitar, they're going to take batteries. Maybe you've got effects pedals that you don't have power supplies for. Anything that requires batteries, wireless microphones, they're going to require changing. So make sure you have spare batteries at all times in your gear, whether it's in your guitar case or in your cable case, what have you. Always take spare batteries. Tip number 5 is to keep some guitar picks and your drinks close to you. If you do acoustic gigs and you're seated while you're playing, sometimes you might have to put your drink on the floor. There might not be a shelf close by to you to actually put your drink on. So think about things like this that connect to your microphone stand that you can put your drink in. It's just faster and easier to just get your water out of that while it's connected to the microphone stand, as opposed to reaching down to the floor. It looks a bit unprofessional, or leaning back and grabbing it off the shelf or whatever. Also, having something like this to hold your picks on the microphone stand is handy. I don't usually take these to your average pub gig because people knock the picks off and steal them, but if you're on a stage where access is limited, then this is a good idea, because occasionally you will drop your pick. It doesn't happen often, hopefully, but when it does, it's good to have this option with a spare pick on it or 2, so you can quickly access that pick and keep on playing without having to stop and search around the stage floor for it. And tip number 6 is to start your gig at a lower volume than what you would normally play. Some venues would appreciate a lower volume. Maybe you're starting earlier in the evening at 6:30, 7 o'clock. People might be still eating. Maybe it's just one of those venues that they like a lower volume in the background just so that people can chat. So when you set all of your equipment up, make sure that your volume is a lot lower than what you would normally have it. And you can always work up from there. The last thing you need is to start off at a volume that is quite loud and then having patrons complain to the staff that it's too loud and then they can't talk. And then, staff coming to tell you to please turn it down. So if you start low, work your way up. You can always do that. You can't start off high and suffer through complaints and have to turn it back down again. It gives you a bad name or a bad look. So always start a bit lower than what you think you need, which can be hard in a solo scenario because when you're playing solo, you're hearing everything on the stage fine, but you're not exactly sure what it's like out in the audience, especially if you're using a monitor. Everything's nice and loud on the stage, but you don't know what they're hearing. So just be wary of that, keep the volume down. And then if someone says, oh, look, we can't hear you or whatever, then start to pull the volume up a little bit then. Tip number 7 is to roll your cables and keep a packing system. What I mean by that is keep your power cables rolled and separated from any kind of instrument cables or speaker cables, etc. But keep them rolled up. Take that time after you finish a gig to roll those cables properly and store them properly. I played in a band many years ago that we would finish a gig and we would just grab all the cables and stuff them in a box. We were just in a hurry to leave, and then that box would be thrown in a trailer. The next time we went to open that box to set our gear up for the gig, there would be a spaghetti mess and it was terrible. It would take 5-10 minutes to unwind all of the cables and get the knots out of them. I learned that the hard way. Nowadays, everything gets rolled up properly and stored away so that the next time I get to a gig, I'm not going to have that spaghetti mess when I go to set my gear up. Tip number 8 is to bring a spare microphone and spare cables. Microphone, okay, you could probably get away without that, but maybe you're at a party and the birthday person wants to give a speech, okay? You've probably got reverb and delay set on your microphone for your vocals that you can't switch off through the mixer quickly. So having a spare microphone is always handy for them to use. And it's also great if your microphone just stops working for any reason. Same for cables. Cables go all the time. Having a spare guitar cable or two and having a spare microphone cable, it's a little tiny bit of extra room in your gig bag, but it's worth taking because when one goes, what are you going to do if you don't have a spare, right? Tip number 9 is to bring your stage clothes separately. Don't wear them to the gig and wear them while you're setting up, just in case. You don't want to get them dirty, right? So wear your t-shirt, your jeans, whatever, to the function and then set up your equipment and then go and get changed into your stage clothes. Sometimes that's not possible. Maybe you're just playing at a local pub or club and it's just not practical to do that. That's fine. Just wear your stage clothes to the gig. But where you can, it's always important to try and look your best on stage. So if you're playing at a wedding, for example, you don't want to get to the gig and set up your equipment wearing a nice white shirt and then have something rub on it and get dirty. So always where you can, try to take those stage clothes separately and then get changed into them before you're going on stage. The last tip I've got for you, tip 10, is to don't overthink. You've been playing a gig for the last hour and a half, 2 hours. Maybe the crowd's not that receptive. Maybe you're not getting much in the way of applause. People are just talking to each other and whatnot. Don't overthink it. It's not because you suck or anything like that. Well, it probably isn't. People are just out there to talk to each other. They're socializing and you're music in the background. So chances are they're not going to sit there and applaud every song. They're just going to be talking to each other, and that's just fine. Don't think of it as that they don't like you, which I'm terrible at. For many years I used to think that every time I played somewhere and someone would walk out, they were just going home. They were never going to stay anyway, but that's not what I thought. And so try not to overthink that. Just get in and play your best and get through the gig. You know, chances are someone will come up to you towards the end of the night or during one of your breaks and give you a compliment about your singing or your playing or whatever. So just don't read into that too much, and don't let it get you down if you do a few shows and there's not many there, or they're just not a receptive crowd. Just water off a duck's back. Just let it go and keep on playing and having fun. So there you have it. They're my top 10 tips for the gigging musician. Maybe you're just starting out and you haven't played yet. Maybe you've done a handful of gigs. I hope some of this information comes in handy. They are all things that I've learned lessons from the hard way over the past 30 years, more so in the early days. So hopefully it can help someone out there. If it does help you, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll be posting more videos like this in the future. And we'll see you then.